Hello, and welcome to The Audacious Marketer, a podcast for the bold and tenacious. I'm your host, Michaela Schneider, and I'm a digital marketing strategy expert and entrepreneur. In this space, we discuss a wide range of marketing, business, and life. So buckle up. We're about to begin. Hey guys. Welcome back. I always feel like the beginning of these episodes are so awkward, but now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like every second of the episode is super awkward. So I don't know if it's just constantly awkward, and I just need to really embrace the awkwardness. But welcome back to another episode. You have no idea how happy I am to have just pressed the record button and to have something to talk to you guys about. I have been getting over a cold these last 2 weeks, and I'm on antibiotics now, and I'm finally starting to feel better, and it has been a wild ride. I'm just really enjoying feeling human again. It's a phenomenal feeling. There's nothing quite like it. So I'm happy to be back. With that said, I've been pretty much out for 2 weeks. That sickness had a chokehold on me. So I didn't get a lot done these last 2 weeks, which means that I have a lot to catch up on, which means that this episode is going to be, it was meant to be fairly chill and nothing too crazy with it. But once I started, I feel like this is going to be me every episode, but I just got into this rabbit hole of research, and I just got sucked into it. So there's a lot of information in what we're going to talk about today. And so I hope you guys enjoy it. I chose this topic because I think it's really intriguing to me. It's really interesting. I love learning about fashion and luxury marketing, which is what today's topic is really revolved around. And so I am really excited to talk to you guys more about this industry and this type of marketing, because it's so multifaceted. It's its own world, and I'm not even close to being a part of it. I'm a consumer of the fashion industry. I'm not a consumer of the luxury market by any means. And so being an outsider, it's a little bit difficult to sort of penetrate the walls of this industry to learn as much as possible, because I feel like what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is fairly high level, and there's so much more to it that I don't even have access to learning about, at least yet. I think that, with time and building knowledge, we'll all get there. We'll all build up on that knowledge. But basically what I'm saying is we're just scratching the surface, and there's so much more to this topic, but this is sort of just an introduction and an overview over this specific thing. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Today we're going to talk about Masstige. What a cool word. A lot of what I am going to talk about today is pulled from an article that was posted on LinkedIn. It's called Masstige Brands, Prestige Brands for the Masses. And it was written by Tammy Sebastian, and it is just filled with, it's not super long, but it's still filled with so much information that is so interesting. And I highly recommend reading up on it. I'm pretty much going to go over, I've pulled stuff from other resources, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about covers most of what's in this article. If you want to look at some graphs, there's some visuals that can be really helpful if you're a visual person like me. This article can be a great resource for you, so I highly recommend checking it out. And I do also want to point out it was published in September of 2021, so it is fairly fresh, which is great because there's a lot of research cited in it, and there's a lot of data that goes into this article. So it's always nice to know that it's a very, very recent. It's not an old publications, old articles. It's always important to make sure that we're pulling from recent things. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. The coughing begins. Sorry. Okay, so raise your hand if you have never heard or seen this word before. Masstige. Masstige. Okay, so I'll go into the definition of masstige. It is mass-produced, relatively inexpensive goods that are marketed as luxurious or prestigious. I have always known about the luxury market versus mass market. And there's this sort of in-between market that I have always referred to them as premium brands. So brands that kind of meet in the middle, where they're expensive, but they're still attainable to most of the middle class. And that's essentially what this is. And this term has been coined in the early 2000s, and it is literally the combination of the words mass and prestige. And I think it's pretty, I think that sums it up, right? I don't know if there's too much more to defining this term. But the way that I see it is this is sort of the industry word that we've put together to refer to this middle market between low to mid-range priced goods versus luxury priced goods. And there's a lot to this concept. It's an entire marketing strategy, and it's very strategic. And there's a lot to what goes into Masstige, and that's why I think this topic is so fascinating, and I think there's some juicy stuff to get into today. It's in terms of marketing, it is considered downward brand extension, and a good example of that would be Apple started making personalized computers, and it later evolved into making MP3 players, which are for a much more attainable price. And so when you have a brand that's starting up at a luxury level and they start to extend their brand downward, that's kind of like a rephrase of what that is. Like I said, it is literally the combination of the words prestige and mass. This term was popularized by two people, Michael Silverstein and Neil Fisk. They wrote a book called Trading Up, and they also wrote a Harvard Business Review article called Luxury for the Masses. And this article was published in 2003, right at the beginning of where this masstige really started to catch wind, and it really started to pick up. The article is still online. You can still find it, and it's a great read. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. And Silverstein and Fisk really go into detail on, I don't know, I think they break it down really well, and I think it's really interesting to read about this concept as it was really getting started. So these products are premium but attainable, and that phrase encompasses the two sort of requirements that masstige has to have. It has to be perceived and considered luxury or premium, and it also has to be sold at a price point that fill that gap between the mid-market and luxury goods. So those are the two requirements that your product or your brand has to have in order to be considered as a part of Masstige. And so, in their book, Silverstein and Fisk cited a lot of examples, and like I said, this was written in 2003, so I think some of the examples were kind of interesting, and I wanted to share some of them with you on this episode. So one example they cited was Bath and Body Works lotion that sells for $1.13 per ounce versus 30 cents per ounce. So the 30 cents refers to what is the average cost of lotion per ounce that you normally would see at a low to mid range price point, and the average is 30 cents. And so then you have this brand, this company that's coming in and making lotion that's just a little bit more. 30 cents to $1.13 is not like, it's like a pretty big jump, but given the like scope of, what's a quarter versus $1, I can afford that jump, right? So another example is Pottery Barn housewares that are considered premium but are also widely available at attainable price points, well below super premium brands. So this is referencing some brands are even literally taking products, ripping the label off, and putting their name on it. And so it's the exact same product, nothing is different, same manufacturer. They're just putting their name on it versus somebody else's name on it. And by putting their name on it, they're able to charge a little bit more. We see this often. This is common. I've seen furniture sold on Wayfair that's also sold, same exact things are sold at places like Pottery Barn. Excuse me, sorry. This market, this Masstige market, is doing things like that. And then it also had this other example. It referenced a wine brand that entered the market at $5 per bottle versus the standard $2 per bottle. And, I can keep on listing examples after examples, but I just thought this was funny because, this was in 2003, right? And, at what point were we selling wine for $2 a bottle? Is this wholesale? No, it can't be. That's the, it doesn't matter what the wholesale price is. It's Masstige. It just matters to the public. $2 a bottle. Damn, if I had been 21 in 2003, I would have died from alcohol poisoning from being wine drunk. But I will say that, I was thinking about this example, and I was thinking about how, if I went into a liquor store to buy some wine, and actually I do this anyway, no matter the price point. I walk into the liquor store. Listen, I'm not made of money. My broke ass can't be buying premium wine all day. I also do not have a palate for it, so it doesn't taste the same. I know it does not, but I do not have that sensitive of a palate to really get the difference. But okay, back to my example. If I walk into a liquor store trying to buy a bottle of wine, what I do is I scan all the prices and I find the cheapest one, and then I buy the bottle that's a couple dollars more than the cheapest one. Because in my mind, I'm like, listen, I'm poor, but I'm not the poorest. So I don't know if that's elitist or there's probably I probably said something wrong there, but I would pay for the $5 bottle knowing that it wasn't the cheapest, and I would feel good about myself for that. I would walk away going yeah, I didn't pay for the $2 bottle. I paid up. I paid extra for the $5 because I'm bougie like that. And it's not bougie at all because it's a $5 bottle of wine. Anyway, I think I'm the target audience for this. I think that's what's happening in this audience section. I think that's the same overall kind of way of thinking that consumers within this class, a middle class that has disposable income, this is our thought process where if we're buying a handbag, and I see something for $20, I think to myself, should I be paying $20 for a really cheap handbag? But I'll find a very, very similar looking handbag somewhere else for $200. It's very well could be the exact same bag just with a different label on it, and I will feel like, to myself, I feel like I am scratching an itch that makes me feel better, that I am paying more for an item. And there's just like this psychological, like it sends serotonin into my body if I pay more for the exact same thing. I don't know. There's probably so much science behind this. Um, excuse me, my goodness, I just gotta take a break. So as I mentioned, it started to really pick up in the early 2000s, and this whole movement was really because of, and at a certain point in the 80s and 90s, people started to have access to more disposable income. Whatever was going on in the economy at the time, the middle class population was growing. And this created a mainstream class of people who had the ability, they had the money to pay more than average for the cost of goods, but not quite enough to pay for true luxury. So this population was growing, and because that population was growing, this mid-range priced goods industry was sort of being underserved. There wasn't a lot of options at that time, right at the very beginning of this. And so sorry, I keep getting notifications. And so because there wasn't a lot of goods being produced in this mid-range price point, and yet we're starting to see some demand for it. Supply and demand, baby, right? So manufacturers started to, they became motivated to start what I mentioned earlier of downward extensions of brands. So launching products at a lower quality and a lower price point. I already referenced Apple. I was trying to think of another really good example. I found a reference to like Ford and Jaguar, and I wasn't following it, but if you're a car person, maybe that gives some insight for you. I think that Ford owned Jaguar, and manufacturing costs were able to go down, and then Jaguar started to become a lot more accessible to the like middle class or like upper middle class, and so they started to sell a lot more. Like before, it was a car that wasn't as common, and now they were able to produce more. I don't know. Just disregard that if that doesn't make any sense. And I kind of referenced this for myself, but with my whole thing, as I walk in and I just feel there's like a chemical in my brain that makes me feel happy when I pay for the $5 bottle of wine versus the $2 bottle of wine. And studies have shown that this is true. Since the beginning of Masstige, we have been doing research, and there's actually been some really interesting articles that, or studies, I should say, that I've come across, and many of them reference and conclude that consumption of Masstige brands lead to brand-induced happiness. So that's been proven. So once these two things happened, where all of a sudden the middle class population started growing, and then manufacturers started downstream extensions, all of a sudden luxury wasn't this sort of elusive dream anymore. It was now actually attainable for the masses. And so this mid-range line of goods started to be sold at a much faster rate, and businesses caught wind of that, and this is an opportunity for them to make money, and the rest is history. Literally, like there's a lot of history beyond that. So now let's talk about the positioning your brand in the Masstige market. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is a very specific marketing strategy. And I'll probably say this multiple times throughout, but if you want to do this, listen to this podcast, read the article that I mentioned, do your research, and really know what you're doing, because it's a very fine line that you're walking on, and if you don't market it properly, this will not work, and it will be a huge failure. No pressure, but like this is a very, very specific way to market things, and if you're going to do it, you should be confident and you should really fully know what you're doing, because it's really easy to mess up. This strategy that I'm about to kind of go over in terms of like pricing is really, this is sort of the first time this has ever been done, so it's quite innovative and it's really important to understand. So you have these three branding options: luxury, Masstige, and this low middle range, or like the mass market brand. And each of these three brands have their own designated perception value. Basically, each are easily identifiable and defined by an audience. A large audience can look at a brand and easily identify and define, is this luxury? Is this Masstige? Or is this low mid-range? And I say that, and I want to say that they're much more, there's less emphasis on them understanding what Masstige is and what a medium brand is, but they are very clear, and you can clearly see whether something is luxury and whether something is a low to mid-range or mass marketed. And so with these three categories, you also have three price points, right? So let's start at the top, luxury branding, right there at the top. And the luxury brand price points line up with the perceived value of the brand. Now, on the very bottom, you have this low to mid-range, this mass market brand. And this pricing also matches up with the perceived value of the brand. Here's the twist. When you get to the middle, when you get to these Masstige brands, the perceived value of Masstige brands do not line up with their perceived value. These brands are priced slightly lower than what they're perceived as. So this gives the impression that the buyer is purchasing a more prestigious product at an affordable price, and it makes them feel like they're getting a good deal and a good deal for a high quality, prestigious product. And so within this model, the price point of prestige brands are actually a lot closer to the mid-low mass market price point than they are to the luxury price point. But in terms of the perception of the brand value, Masstige stays right there in the middle. So there's some this sort of disconnect between the price point and the perceived value as Masstige, where you don't see that with luxury and the lower to mid-market range. And that's sort of key. You want to, again, this, I can keep referencing me walking into a liquor store when I have this I'm getting this feeling that, oh, I'm getting a better, higher quality wine, and at a much more affordable price. And there's this level of like this feeling of accomplishment that I feel when I pay a couple extra dollars more for basically the same bottle of wine. We're trying to accomplish that same concept with any and all other industries and businesses within this. So before I go on, there's some very specific marketing things that you can do that you should be doing if you do want to enter this Masstige market. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between marketing Masstige versus marketing luxury. And they share, these two branding values share a lot in common, but they also have quite a few different key elements that are used in their marketing efforts. Some things that they share are brands try to communicate exclusivity, sophistication, accomplishment, right? These are the sort of values that both types of brands hold. These are the messages that they want to send to their consumer. These are the feelings that they want to evoke within their consumer. They want to evoke sophistication. They want them to feel like they are successful when they purchase this brand or this label or whatever. But when you start to look at the differences, luxury really tends to focus a lot more on heritage, timelessness, how classic are these pieces, how classic is this product, authenticity, and prestige. Luxury, the one thing that I see so often when we talk about luxury marketing is, all of the things that I just said. Oh my God, the sun is like in my eyes right now. Holy crap. Having classic pieces and this like prestigious name often comes up. But the one thing that comes up I just see constantly is heritage. They really, really care so much about the history of their brand, how the brand started, who was a part of that history, who built it up, how was it built up, what were the core values when it started, and how did we hold on to those morals and values and that we're still holding on to today. They're very, very into that. They're very proud of their heritage, and that's something that is exclusive to luxury brands. You don't see that often, even often with Masstige brands. Definitely you don't see that with mass market brands as well. So that's a really big indicator. It's a really big difference. Masstige tends to focus on things like the allure and seasonability. Those are things that you don't see as much in luxury brand marketing. Masstige is not super heavy on being trend driven, but that is still part of it a little bit. It's not as trend driven as fast fashion or this mass market branding, but it does have an influence. And so luxury is very, very rarely trend driven. Luxury, again, it goes back to like luxury is timeless, whereas Masstige tends to be a little bit more like, oh, this is what's going on now. This is the newest fad, and this is our luxury take on current trends. So I thought those sort of differentiating between the just general messaging within marketing between Masstige and luxury. I think it's really important to understand that and to take note of that. Within this article that I referenced at the beginning from LinkedIn, it went into, it referenced and it cited a study that they actually did. They studied groups of consumers or potential consumers, and what they were trying to do is they were trying to see how people, what elements people picked up on to determine whether they decided a brand was Masstige or if they failed at being Masstige, essentially. And they also gathered the information of what things they did pick up on and defined in order to find similarities in the brands that were successful at it, to try to learn what should we be doing if we want to be marketing Masstige products. And so they created their own scale, and it's called the Masstige Mean Score Scale, MMSS. And the higher the score of the brand, the more the brand had created a top of mind brand based on mass prestige, and then the lower the score of the brand had failed to achieve mass prestige in that market. And so, based on that information, they created these guidelines for us to successfully market Masstige brands. And so they developed the 4 Ps, which is product, price, place, and promotion. I feel like I just in my mind replayed the dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. I feel like it should be product, price, place, promotion, and product. That doesn't vibe. Anyway, so let's start with product. And the way that they kind of did this is these are the requirements and these are what you need to do based on these 4 Ps. So for the product, it should be born a Masstige product. It should enter the market as Masstige. You should not try to turn a product that is a lower quality and turn it into Masstige. You shouldn't try to take a luxury product and drop it down. It needs to start and end as Masstige. The look and feel of the product should match with the proposed prestige image, and innovation is key. We don't want to be trying to knock off higher end brands. We don't want to try to take lower end brands and make dupes of these things and try to sell them at a higher price. We want to try to be innovative within the product. Next up is price. Along the same lines of it should be born a Masstige product. It should be introduced at a relatively high price, and it should maintain consistently that high price. You also want to avoid price-based sales promotions. No Black Friday deals, no Labor Day sales, no 50% off flash sale. But based on the idea of your price point is that you should not be fluctuating the price point. This brings about confusion in the minds of our audience about the actual positioning of the product. And when they start to get confused, that can lead to change into that perceived value of the product. So it's really important that you start high and you stick with it and you leave it. Don't touch it. Next up is place. So products should be distributed through selective and controlled distribution. You want to avoid market penetration. Again, product will lose its appeal if it's literally everywhere. You want to try to have some sort of exclusivity, and you can achieve that by being very selective with how you distribute it. You also want to exercise direct marketing. Don't sell through different sellers. Try to sell directly to the consumer. And they also mentioned, obviously it depends on your brand and your business and what you're selling, whether it's a service or a good, but franchising can be considered a good option for Masstige. And then lastly, it talks about promotion. So you want to use premium packaging. You want to be selective while choosing endorsers, also known as influencers. You want to be very careful with who you want to be speaking for your product. So be very selective in that. I think I wrote this down wrong. Yeah, okay. It says to make use of below the line advertising. And this was regional. And I didn't really get too much into because they did this study on different cities and they also compared if certain locations had different perceptions of brands and all of that. And it didn't really, this LinkedIn article didn't get too much into that topic. But in terms of making use of below the line marketing efforts, below the line marketing is marketing that is targeting a very specific audience type and a very specific potential customer. And in the study, they mentioned that in certain cities, it's a good idea to do that. In certain cities, it may not be. So this one is something to take with a grain of salt. They also said to execute ads through the delivery of TV advertising or commercial advertising. And those are two sort of very different things below because TV advertising is considered above the line marketing. So I got the impression that this is very regional and location based, and I would do research on the best way to if you want to do very specific targeted ads or marketing efforts, or if you want to try to keep it higher level and appeal and market more towards the masses. I think that is, there's not like a black and white answer for you. It depends on your region. And I actually do think it depends on your price point and your industry. So, yeah, take that one with a grain of salt. And so, yeah, that's it. I covered kind of all parts from start to finish of this high level vision of Masstige. I think it's really important to think about how a lot of what I talked about has this impact on your marketing efforts, and a lot of it is really based on your entire business model and how you want to set up your business. And it goes beyond what kind of ads do you want to do, or it goes beyond what kind of price point do you want. And all of those things are key elements that need to be thought of. But you also want to think about some things that I didn't mention and that I don't have the time or ability to go into today. But what is your customer experience like? What is your customer service like? What is your consumer behavior that might drive certain things that is beyond just, what kind of price point do you want to put it at? And I think that one thing that I think about, which I think is actually a good example, and I didn't really get too much into some examples, but there's this level of if I walk into class with a cup of McDonald's coffee versus if I walk into class with a Starbucks cup in my hand, right? There's this illusion of luxury that is associated a lot more with Starbucks than there is with McDonald's. And what are they doing within their customer experience that differentiates that? Same thing with another good example is Target versus Walmart, right? Same concept, same store, completely different experiences. And I remember so long ago watching a documentary on Target and how it wasn't specifically about Target, but they referenced Target and they had sort of a segment on it, and things from their lighting to the floor tiles that they use to the width of their aisles, like the uniforms that their employees wear. These all have such a massive impact on the fact that we perceive Target to be a bougier version of Walmart, when in reality they're very, very similar in the things that they sell. And so it's important to think about more than just the specific product and these much more logical, tangible things, but go beyond the tangibles and think about what are the things beyond that affect the experience that my customer is getting. And I think that also has a really big impact on your positioning within the Masstige market. And so with that said, there's so much more to this topic that you can go into and research. I highly recommend checking out the article that I mentioned, and there's a lot of other studies that talk about Masstige. So it's a really, I think it's a really interesting topic, and I highly encourage you to dive in more if you are interested. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for getting this far. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking about it, and I genuinely cannot wait to record the next episode. I will say that before I go, I started out with, again, I kind of wanted something casual and fun and nothing like too technical. And of course, this turned pretty technical. But I initially wanted to go into the story of Hermes because they are one of the highest luxury brands. And the way that they market and they sell their Birkin bag is so specific and it's so interesting. And I kind of wanted to go into their strategy behind selling their Birkin bag. They rely heavily on scarcity marketing, which is it's such a good way to market things, especially luxury. In fact, I think to market luxury, I think scarcity marketing is a pretty big requirement. But I think it's a really interesting story and something that I would love to talk about. And that's kind of how I fell into this whole idea of Masstige. And so I think maybe next week or sometime in the near future, I'll talk about Hermes and their Birkin bag. But if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to shoot me an email or comment. This is getting posted on YouTube as well. And so you can go on there and comment if you have any questions or anything else that you'd like to let me know about. And also leave a review. Do all the things that podcasts do, all the things that podcasters ask people to do. I don't know what that is exactly. Leave a review and follow. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.